Hey guys, Nick over here at Randy's, getting ready to go through the 68 RFE Stage 2 DIY plug and play kit with you. This should be the kit you guys received, and these are going to be the tools you're going to need to complete this job. And first things first, I'm going to go ahead and test this drain back valve we got here. You should be able to blow through it with compressed air, not be able to blow or suck through it with your mouth. You might get a little bit of nasty taste from that. It's all right. And of course, take our filter, lube up the gasket. Always lube up the gasket. It's never going to be fun to remove if you don't. Take our billet filter adapter. Long threads go into the case, short end towards the filter. Zip that in, tighten it down. I've pretty much got a good feel for how these need to be tightened in my hand. You always take a torque wrench though on all this stuff you're about to see with me and advise it to your book. Go off those specs. All right, go ahead and spin that filter in. We're going to go snug, and then 3/4 past snug. You really never want to go much more further than that. You'll have a hell of a time getting that filter off on your next service. Go ahead and take that drain back valve, spin that on, tighten her down. Again, always use torque specs from the book. This is a pipe threaded fitting, by the way, so you never really want to over tighten this. You can cause some serious damage if you do. And now we're going to go ahead and take our low reverse drum. Take note of the feed hole that I just showed you right there. It's going to point towards you to the inside of the case as you put this in. Make sure you're real easy and gentle with it as you're going down on the splines. They can get kind of stuck up on there for you. Once she's all the way seated, we're gonna go ahead and take note, make sure that feed hole's in the right spot. Drum seated all the way down. Grab our snap ring. Beveled edge is going to face up towards you. So we're gonna go ahead and set that in here. You want to make sure it gets fully seated to the inside of the case, as you can see in this picture here. That's a fully seated drum. And then we're going to go to our gear train. We're going to want to take note that all the bearings on the gear train are color-coded black. First bearing, it's going to be the black side facing up towards you, as you see in this picture. And then we're going to go ahead and assemble the shell. Again, color-coded bearing on this one. There's going to be 3 bearings in here, 2 bigger ones, 1 smaller, fatter one. This is where the small, fat one goes. Black color coding facing outwards. Put the rest of the gear train together. Make sure she's seated in there fully. Grab your snap ring. Slide her on in there. I like to go through with my screwdriver afterwards and just double check, just make sure all the way around is seated in that snap ring. You don't want it to come out. Last bearing for the gear train. Again, black color coding goes up facing towards you. Always, always lube the shaft. That's all I gotta say, just lube that shaft. Kind of a beast to drop this in here. You wanna make sure you get a good grasp on it, kind of how you see me in the picture there. If you catch your hands on this aluminum case, you will get cut. And as we get in there, we wanna make sure that this is seated fully down on the sprag. You'll do that by making sure she turns clockwise and will not turn counterclockwise. That'll ensure that she is seated fully on the sprag for you. We're gonna go ahead and take the rest of our gear train. I like to check it, make sure everything rolls freely in my hands. Set that down and in there. And we're gonna go ahead and start stacking out our 2C clutches now on my bench. As you're gonna see here, I've got a thick steel plate. This one's gonna go down first into the case. You're gonna have 2 dots that you want pointing upwards towards you. And we're gonna go thick steel plate, clutch, still, clutch, still, clutch, still, until we get all 4 of those clutches in there. We're going to want to take our snap ring that we have left. It's going to be one of the non-beveled snap rings we have left on our bench. Going to want to make sure we leave this open slot in the snap ring facing towards the open slot in the case, as you can see in this video here. Take note, the snap ring will have wiggle room inside of its groove. That's perfectly fine. That's just meant for a stopping point for our center support. And from here, we're going to want to go ahead and set up our 4C hub with its thrust washer. We want to take this green assembly glue. We're just using it as a tack. You don't need to spread it all the way around. We're just using it to hold things into place. You want to make sure right here we have these little pegs lined up in their slots. You can have these off, and if they're off, you will break this thrust washer upon assembly. So make sure those are fully seated down and they all match up in their little holes. Take this bearing here. You see the painted surface. It'll want to go down, and the 2 little tabs will face upwards. Set that down in there. Make sure she's seated to green, just green tacky assembly glue just to hold it in place. Want to make sure we put the bearing on the back side of this. Take note of the position. And we're going to go ahead and drop her in. Give her a little bit of a jimmy here. Shouldn't be too bad. Sometimes you got to play with it a little bit. She'll fall in. And from there, we're going to take our center support That comes fully stacked, ready to go. There's a few different ways of setting these onto the 4C hub. I like to do it like this, set her down and jiggle the output shaft until she falls into place. You'll notice she's in place when she's resting against this snap ring as shown. And now we're gonna take our last beveled snap ring here and set it in the case with the beveled edge facing upwards towards you. Make sure she gets fully seated by looking right here and seeing that you can see this little shiny silver edge showing that it's pressed all the way into the case fully. And our next step is going to be to replace this old bearing with a new bearing on your thrust washer from your core. You're going to want to take note on the orientation, as by this diagram here, you want the painted surface towards the plastic surface and the non-painted surface towards you. If you don't install these bearings correctly, it will cause transmission failure. Now we're going to install this onto our drum. We want to take note of the orientation of the black thrust washer facing upwards. Again, get it to seat down with some tacky green. Time to install the drum into the case. Sometimes it's a little bit of a fight and you got to wiggle her into place, but as you can see here, here's her seated fully into the case. Time to add in our last bearing out of the kit here. We want to make sure that the paint is oriented facing upwards towards you. Just go ahead and drop her down on the shaft. You're only going to want to make sure she just drops all the way to the bottom. Lube the shaft as always. You don't want to get in there nice and dry. Tickle the hole here with a little bit of lube too. Nice, like that. Want to set the pump in. We want to make sure for sure that she's seated fully all the way down, and you do that by checking right here and making sure you don't have any gap between your pump and the case. Take our impact or by hand and just snug the bolts down. We don't want to impact anything. And we're going to go ahead and refer to torque spec by the book. Get the little clicker to go off there. Oh man, tried and true Terry back there with breakfast. Doesn't look like he brought me any. Time for quality control here. We're going to go ahead and air check our entire transmission. First, to start off with the low reverses, you're gonna see me add air and release my hand off the air nozzle and then pull the tip away. You should hear it take air and hold air, and as you pull the nozzle off with your hand off the trigger, you should hear air leak out towards you, letting you know that it's holding pressure. As I go through that, you watch me do the low reverses first, the 2Cs, the 4Cs, and that first hole next to the filter is going to be your overdrives. The next hole under it's the underdrives, and that third hole over is your input reverse. And if that checks out, it's time to move on to the next step, which would be checking your end play on your case by the book. Now we're gonna go and take our baby maker, lube up the seal around the connector, check out our manual switch plate here. We wanna make sure she's oriented into the reverse detent position, which is a second click over. That click right there. It'll make it easy to install it into the case and make sure you line it up properly. You want to push that park rod back to where she just rests against the park crawl. From there, we're gonna take our baby maker and just slip her down on in there. She's going to line up just like so with that pin. And you wanna double check just to verify this, or else you won't get any shifting function whatsoever. Run these bolts down, go ahead and take our torque wrench and go torque specs off the book. Get that baby maker seated in there properly. From there, we're gonna go ahead and lube up our filter, slip it down into the case. Make sure she's seated fully by pressing down and she's flat against the baby maker. Put in the T25 to hold her in place and torque it down. Now we're gonna go ahead and flip the trans up and start working on the tail housing and the parking gear. Want to slip the parking gear down on the shaft and insert the snap ring. And we're gonna make sure she's seated down fully. If not, we wouldn't have park, and that wouldn't be such a good thing when you go to park on a hill the next time. And we're gonna take our right stuff. We like right stuff because in the name it says right stuff. There's tons of other silicones you guys know of and you can use, but again, the right stuff, it's the right stuff. Gonna go ahead and drop this down on, grab all of our bolts, start zipping them down. We're gonna refer to the book for torque specs on these yet again, and we're gonna go ahead and flip this trans back over and get ready to install our pan. I like to go ahead and take some parts cleaner, solvent, something like that, just to activate the gasket. It helps it seal a little better. If not, it's not needed. And once we get that, we're gonna grab the pan and slip her on, set all of our bolts in all the way around, zip them down, refer to the book for the torque specs yet again. Pump cover is gonna be one of our next to our last steps. We're gonna wanna lube up everything real good so she slides down nice and easy for us. You don't wanna fight this step. It'll cause leaks down the line after you got it installed. A few little taps may be needed with a rubber mallet. Shouldn't be too hard. She should slip down in there pretty nice. Enough for the snap ring to go into its correct place. Last but not least, we're going to be installing our 2-speed sensors into the case and our line pressure transducer into the case. Zip it in. Grand finale is we're gonna lube up the vent tube, slip her on, and call this a done job. You always want to make sure, though, you want to follow all your installation instructions and torque specs when installing the transmission. Your relearn must be performed before you drive the truck, and if you can't do that, you should take it to your dealership to have it done for you. And thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys next time.